School District School Board to order. Welcome. Thank you all for attending, and please join me for the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have a consent agenda tonight. Is there a motion for approval?
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, approved. Student reps, Kylene and William.
This is our last time.
Oh, you're not going to be here next month? Yeah, you'll be.
Well, we might
What are you
introduce like
doing?
the new reps.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We might do that. What are you doing? I'm gonna go for a senior class president. So
Oh, good. Okay.
be different. Okay, I'm gonna start off with the clubs. So FBLA had nationals for advanced word processing at the end of this month. National Business Honor Roll at the end of the month too. They had state in April, and that was very successful. Also, they're planning ahead for next year, and they will get together on June 14th. ASB just got done with prom, and the committee worked super hard to get everything done. The theme was Footloose / Dancing Away with My Heart. They got the chance to get barrels from Vice Bridge, and they borrowed trailers from the Kramers. Also plants from the Bluegrass, borrowed them from the night. So they are thankful for whoever had a helping hand in prom. Another thing is elections have been occurring right now, and you'll be finding out shortly who got what. Thespians Club, they have been working very hard on their one-act shows. They performed on May 9th, 10th, and 11th, and they hope that every single one of you guys got the chance to see their show. May 23rd, they are performing at Mark Twain. May 24th, they are having a theater awards night for everyone who participated in the shows. FFA, CE's first in crops in state. That was Monday and Tuesday of last week. Nationals are next October. They got second in ag mechanics. Food for America is on May 28th, and they're excited for all the children to come out and check it out. Rewards Banquet is on Thursday, the 23rd, and the county fair is coming up, and they're looking forward to that. Interact Club, they're wrapping everything up and having a barbecue next Saturday, and they're excited that this club is growing, and they ended up with 40 members. A couple of things they wanted to, and they really worked hard in the community and wanted to make a change, also helped out with SACA. Key Club, they're working with Kiwanis on the pep parade, helping making awards and set up and clean up on the day of. Overall, all the clubs worked very hard this year, and they did an amazing job to get in the community, and Silverton High is very proud. We're going into Foxes and having everyone learn to give. We also thank the school board for always being there for Silverton, so thank you.
All right. So, this meeting marks the end of the very successful spring sports regular season. In boys golf, the team competed in the Mid-Willamette Conference District Tournament at Tri-Sting Tree in Corvallis on May 6th. Individually, the team did well, but still did not place amongst their competitors due to a lack of players. Overall, the boys improved greatly and had a successful year. Girls golf also ended similar to the boys. They did well at districts May 5th, but unfortunately were unable to place due to a lack of players. The season helped improve the girls' abilities greatly. Hopefully next year more will participate. Boys tennis. The varsity boys competed in districts May 8th through 10th at Crescent Valley. Singles players Kelsey Rossborough, who was seeded second, and Alex Carlier, who was seeded third, did extremely well. Rossborough placed third overall, and Carlier placed second. Doubles team, Toby Roth and Zach Gould were hopeful to place, but unfortunately did not. Rossborough and Carlier are set to compete at state Saturday, May 18th. Girls tennis also took part in the Mid-Willamette Conference districts May 8th through 10th at CV High School. Captain Gracie Matchnick was seeded 6th overall, but went on to lose in 3 games to the number 5 seed. In addition, the team sent 3 doubles teams to districts. Unfortunately, the teams lost in the consolation round, and as a result, no girls will be going to state. The JV team also did well at districts. Miranda Hansen and Natalie Arrowfee placed third. In the end, the girls had a superb season. Baseball. The baseball team finished the season strong with 2 tight losses and 1 win over Lebanon. The win came on May 8th with a score of 10-3, and the team seemed to be working on all cylinders. Unfortunately, the boys weren't ranked high enough to participate in a playing game with a 4-19 record, and thus their season ended May 10th. The year seemed to be a rebuilding one, but hopefully as the young team grows, wins will come. The softball team, on the other hand, successfully turned their season around about halfway through. They ended the season strong with a 14 win over Woodburn May 8th and a 14-11 win over Lebanon May 10th. The girls are set to compete in a playing game May 16th. Track and field. Silverton's track and field is the only sport left to compete in districts. They're set to take part in the Mid-Willamette Conference District meet this week from May 15th to 16th. After winning a high percentage of events at their last meet in Dallas, May 8th, the team's expectations are very high. The JV team competed in districts May 10th at West Albany, and they placed second. Hopefully the the track team will end the season with a strong performance. That's all for sports. Thank you.
Great. Any questions?
No, the year went quickly,
Yeah.
so
Thank
appreciate all the good support, good reports over the year.
Everything they did.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming every month and giving us good reports. It's been good. We'll miss you next year.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you, you guys. I neglected to do one thing after the consent agenda. For anybody who doesn't know, I wanted to introduce the new Evergreen School Principal, Brett Davison. Brett, you want to stand? Just so you can. So. We're glad to have Brett in that spot. So, okay, I'd like to open it up with audience, with visitors. Ken, your name's down on the agenda. Do you want to come up first and sign in, even though we all know you, I think?
Good evening, Chair Roth, members of the board. For the record, my name is Ken Hector, and I am here tonight as your representative to the Willamette Education Service District. I'm happy to share some comments or answer questions at your preference.
Why don't you start with comments and then we can go to questions?
Well, I've had the honor of serving as the Zone 3 representative, which includes obviously the Silver Falls School District as well as 6 other districts since July 1 of 2010. And unless you've been in a cave that time and not read the Statesman, you know that there have been ongoing issues, certainly at WSD, but also in the mind's eye, I think, of the Statesman. So I think, as you well know, I was encouraged to seek the position by former Superintendent Rossler, who has yet to make amends for twisting the arm to do that. But, I have it on good authority that eventually I'll get even with him. But seriously, I've had the pleasure of doing that. Went in there at a very tough time. We all know what the circumstances were with the BSD. And I think I can honestly say that in the time I've been there, I've seen tremendous change and improvements in that agency. And I certainly don't mean to imply that my presence there has done that. There were several new people who came in at the same time I did. Ann Wiley from the St. Paul area. Dixon Bledsoe from here as the social service representative, and several other representatives. And I think together we've been able to work collaboratively in terms of resolving some of the many issues that face the VESD. The most recent audits by the Secretary of State and the internal auditors all show, from a fiscal standpoint, a compliance standpoint, that WSD is by far moving in the right direction. I believe that through the monthly executive council, Superintendent Belando is able to share with you the information that is coming out of the WSD. So, and I hope that's beneficial. I know one of the things that we did early when those of us who were new came on board was we felt it appropriate to add superintendent liaisons to our board, which we did, and we now have two school district superintendents that serve as liaisons, sit with our meetings, actually will sit in executive session if they so desire. And their presence and, more importantly, their participation, I think, is valuable because it's great as we discuss our customers, our clients, you and all the school districts we serve. It's nice to have that perspective, a superintendent's perspective, sitting next to you, so I can, if I have a question, particularly on some of the more technical aspects of what we do, it's nice to be able to reach over to Rick, and prior to that, Robin Stout from Perrydale and Ken Clevitz from Jefferson, and be able to just turn over to them and say, okay, what's this mean to you? How's this going to impact your district? Because, truthfully, obviously I live with an educator, but it's a different ballgame when you're immersed in the things, the financing and those sorts of things. So it's nice to know that we're contemplating action, what that action is really going to mean at the end of the day to the folks we serve. And so having them has been, I think, extremely beneficial, and I think there isn't a person on our board who wouldn't agree with me on that. And so I think as we look over the past 3 years, there's been some bumps, and I'm sure the way the media is, there's still going to be some bumps. But we resolved the many cases that were in litigation. Fiscally, we're in a much better position. Obviously, we've done some significant reduction in staffing, which is the logical thing to do. I think more importantly, we've eliminated some of the non-education programs, if you will, that WSD had gotten involved with years ago. Be it, and I think at the time that it wasn't necessarily a bad idea, but I think the focus is the core services that an educational service district can provide. I don't see driver's education as one of those, especially when you have private sector organizations that could provide that. Chemeketa provides it, and the fact that WSD couldn't do it in cost recovery, it didn't make sense, and that's gone. As you probably are aware, Project Solutions, which has been a very solid program for the ESD, and I think it has helped many school districts as they go through major construction projects, is closing down, and that's reflective of the fact that construction overall throughout the state for schools is down, and the program is not paying for itself, and we won't allow a program to go forward that is not going to be able to sustain itself. So those are some of the things that we're doing. I'm hopeful that my perception that communications with our component school districts is vastly improved over the way it had been, and there's a much greater degree of transparency. That said, we still have the issues with the Statesman, and I'll be just categorically honest, I don't think it's going to go away. I think there's a reporter at the Statesman that just does not like the WSD and would like to see it go away, and is willing to go down that road. But as I look at it, it's tough to combat somebody advising in 50-gallon drums. But I think the people who are around us, including the two superintendents that sit as liaisons, are fully aware of what goes on, how we conduct our business, how we do it transparently. And while I will acknowledge that in that last article in the paper, she talked about the illegal and secret hiring of the superintendent, nothing could be further from the truth. As you know from doing executive sessions, there are statutory provisions you cite when you go into a session. And there's a separate one for each particular area of business you're going to cover. And in discussing contracts regarding the superintendent, there's one that covers documents. And unfortunately, our attorney didn't give us that particular site, and so therefore we were covered. And therefore we were in violation of the open meeting law. However, the Attorney General's Rules of Model Procedure state that the remedy for that is that if that occurs, because I'm well aware that we're all lay people and sometimes a mistake will be made, the remedy is to just have that same discussion, transact that same business in open session. And that's exactly what we did. So there was no secrecy in our hiring of Dr. Novotny as both the acting superintendent when Superintendent Brady had to leave due to medical issues in the family, nor more recently when we concluded after a year as a probationary, if you will, and a full review of his performance, that it made sense to continue his employment, and we offered him a 3-year contract, because we think he's done a good job, and that provides stability for the organization. So we'll continue to do our best on behalf of our school districts, and I appreciate the confidence you shared with me in the past, and if you see fit to do that again, I'd be happy to serve. And I will be very honest with you and say, after 3 years there, I was frankly ready to step down and let somebody else do it. But I was particularly motivated by those newspaper articles because I don't want to walk away from something and have it appear that they're right. I will never back away from something like that. So I'm happy to go back and serve if that's your pleasure. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Ken?
Yeah, I appreciate you serving. Hope you continue. What do you think the long-term viability is of WSD with school districts beginning to take more and more of the services that traditionally the service district has taken care of, and therefore less money for the WSD to operate under?
Well, obviously a number of the districts have, the bigger districts, Salem, Kaiser, Newburgh, McMinnville, and Woodburn have opted out, but interesting enough, they're still purchasing services. So I think in terms of long-term viability, I don't see that piece changing because they, even as big as Salem Kaiser is, they still purchase services. Obviously, smaller districts, I think it becomes even more important for them to have the opportunity to obtain those services. That to do that independently gets quite problematic for them. So I think in that sense, the stability will be there. Now, the caveat to that it will be with the whole reform that Rudy Crew is bringing to Oregon. One of the things they are looking is changing the entire structure of ESD statewide and going to a more, I will call it a super regional model where there would be essentially 6 ESDs in the state as opposed to the number there are now. And then smaller ones would serve as just call it an associate ESD, if you will. They wouldn't have the administrative structure that all ESDs had. So you would eliminate a lot of administration in ESDs, in smaller ESDs. Now, whether that comes to fruition, that's going to be a legislative decision. And I don't see that happening this session, but it's something they're working on. There's a white paper on it that's been submitted. So. But I think ultimately the viability of ESDs is fairly good.
Okay. Other questions?
Just a comment. Excuse me. Appreciate you serving. It's admirable that you're willing to stay in the fire as well. So.
Yeah, like I said, I don't back away from a fight. So, and I'm serving with a lot of good people, and that makes it very rewarding as well. And that's both board people as well as the staff at the ESD. There's a lot of good people there who I think are doing good things, and so that makes it pretty rewarding in and of itself. So thank you very much for those kind words, especially from somebody that knows a little bit about volunteer service.
Yes, Ken, thank you for your service, and thank you for spending time on that board. This is an action item. Later this evening, we vote as a board to approve Ken for another 3 years. Would anybody else like to address the board tonight? I've told a couple people where, yes, please come up, sign in, and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Mark Rivera. My daughter's a cheerleader at Silverton High School. She's done it for 2 years now. She'll be a junior next year. It's been a wonderful program for her. It's an amazing confidence builder, keeping her in great shape, keeping her tone and everything. Had a really good program. We placed at 3 different events this year at our competition team. However, our coach, our beloved coach, was not renewed. Her contract was not renewed. And we're really not sure why. She did a great job. The competition coach is a voluntary position. They put in countless hours, training and taking care of these girls. If they hire a new coach, that new coach will be under no obligation to coach the competition team for free. We're getting a competition coach for free with Courtney Sargent, who the girls love. You can't buy that kind of commitment that she's put in for the last 4 years as an assistant coach, and then this last year as the head coach for cheer. I would like you guys to compel the administration to renew her contract, which, by the way, only barely covers her gas. It doesn't pay very much money. I mean, you're getting a real good deal, money-wise. Anyway, as your website says, this is a court of last resort. The administration doesn't want to, listen to us or do anything. I don't think that she needed to be fired. I believe that she deserves another chance. We had a good year this year, and we were building on it for next year. Anyway, that's what I got to say. And I would hope that maybe you guys could consider doing that for us, because we don't know where else to go.
Okay, questions? Okay, thank you. This is a personnel matter, so we'll look into it. Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the board tonight? Yes.
Good evening. My name is Rich Gallagher. I live at 315 Mill Street in Silverton. I'm here to, I guess, complain basically about the school bond levy and particularly about the way it has been presented. The school bond measures claim that the estimated yearly property tax rate is anticipated to remain at existing levels. I believe is deceptive. We will pay property taxes nearly triple what we have paid in the past for the existing bonds. We will pay nearly triple those property taxes in the next 20 years. This is something that was obvious to me when I first saw the graphic presentation of the proposal. The right side of the graph is obviously much bigger than the left side of the graph. The area under the graph is indicative of the total property taxes that will be paid. There's no way in my mind that translates into remaining at existing levels. My concerns are in a one-page document that Denise distributed to you. There's some additional copies on the table at the back if anyone in the audience is interested. At the document's bottom is a graphic representation of the bond measures property tax impacts, and it is pretty much the same thing that was presented in the public presentations, but it shows all of the tax rates going back to the beginning of the 94 bond. It also indicates that we're looking at on average from the 1994 bond all the way through 2027, an average bond rate of $2.16 per thousand, which is much lower than the 55% higher $3.35 per thousand proposed rate. If this levy fails, I'd ask you folks to please try to address the concerns that I've laid out, and particularly in communication with the public. The impression that I and a lot of other people get from first reading is that your property taxes aren't going to change. That's not true at all. The property tax rates compound with ever increasing valuations. Those two together make the property taxes for schools climb dramatically. So if the levy fails, I'd like you to address my concerns in a more measured and proposal, hopefully something that has a much shorter term levy. I don't trust anything that proposes that it knows what's going to happen 20 years out. The only thing that's certain about long-range planning is it's wrong. The longer it is, the more wrong it is. They're never right. Let's see, and I think another issue that has troubled me with it is the notion that the taxpayers will fund the abandonment and sale of Eugene Field without getting that money back to reduce the bond debt. To me, that's very much like the big bank and automobile company bailouts, where taxpayers funded that, the money came back, it was not at all used to reduce the debt, the enormous debt that it contributed to. That is something that could be addressed, whether or not the levy passes, could be addressed in implementing the plan and looking for savings in expenditures to implement the plan. And I would like to see and encourage you folks to look for ways to return those savings to the taxpayers rather than keeping them in the district. I encourage others to vote no on the measure. I'd like to see us move on to a less expensive and much more measured approach to funding our schools in the future. And for anyone that shares these concerns, I would love to get together and figure out how we can fix some of these and do what I think would be a better job and a more fair job for the taxpayers.
I'd like to address just a couple items you mentioned. First, the bond rates. I think we've been advertising to be the same as the 2012 rates, which all we can do is speak for the school district. The other taxes may go up or down. However, I think what you'll find is we're bonding for a certain amount of dollars, so as property taxes go up, the actual dollars that each taxpayer will pay should go down as we see growth and as we see increase in property values. So if I read this correctly, I think you're saying that as property values increase, the amount of dollars each individual taxpayer pays will be higher as well, and that's not the case. As values increase, your rate will actually drop.
Yeah, $335 per thousand.
I don't know exact numbers.
See, that's part of my problem. Had the presentation showed a declining rate per thousand for my house to someone else's house because there was growth.
But see, we can't predict growth or
Exactly.
or inflation. We can tell you what it is today.
Exactly. You can't, and I think it is misleading. I think that most people get the impression that your property taxes will not go up.
They will not go up for the school district bond from the 2012 levels.
And that's not what, I can quote directly from the bond measure on the ballot.
You've quoted it directly right here. Isn't that what you've quoted at the very top of your article here?
It is, and it says nothing
And
about 2012.
it says that the property tax rate is anticipated, and you underline this, to remain at the existing level. What you didn't underline is tax rate. So you're taking nominal dollars, and you're saying that the nominal dollars are not the same over the prior 20 years as what they'll be in the future 20 years. That's apples and oranges. You're saying that we said something that we didn't say. We've said that the tax rate is anticipated to remain at existing levels, and that's factually true, and it's not misleading. So to me, it's misleading to say that we've said something that we haven't, and then to try and compare apples and oranges and say that we've been somehow deceptive. That doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I'm not saying you.
Well, you say that this board has been deceptive and that the administration has been deceptive in the way that it's been
What I
presented.
said is that the description is deceptive.
Well, I just read the description that you quoted here. Is there a different description that's deceptive?
No, that's it, and it says levels, plural, not one. It doesn't mention anything about 2012.
It says existing levels. So I'm sorry, I don't agree with you that it's deceptive. It seems to me like it's factually accurate, and if it's misunderstood, again, to me it's deceptive to take a prior 20 years and say that the next 20 years aren't going to be the same nominal dollars, because that's never been presented, and that's not been represented even to anyone.
Well, I don't know that we need to argue it out here. You know what my concerns are. I would say that I believe that the presentation and the rates that were quoted for the past, or indicated for the past and the future, are in nominal dollars.
Well, you've reproduced it for us right here, and you've reproduced what we presented, and it shows a rate, and that's 335, and that's factually going to be the rate going forward. So again, I don't know how that was I don't understand how that can be perceived to have been a misrepresentation.
My point is that isn't the existing levels. If you look at the existing bonds, at the two current bonds.
Well, it says the rate is existing levels, so levels refers to rate in this sentence.
Yes, and the average rate
It's 335.
for the two existing bonds.
But nobody said the average rate. It says present rate. I'm sorry, but you want to take and parse the language that's used, and so I guess that's what I do for a living, is parse language that's used. But this language to me is very clear, and it's not confusing, it's not deceptive, and in my view, it's not misleading. And so I guess we can have a difference of opinion on that, but to me, I don't think it could have been more clear. So that's why I'm being defensive about this and defending, I guess, the administration and the board and the district's activities in this, because there was a great deal of effort, I can tell you, that was put in by not just the board, not just the administration, but also many members of the community that sat and that put together, all of this with a lot of fidelity towards the idea of being transparent and being truthful. So, I apologize if I get a little bit heated, but I just think that it's unreasonable to take and twist this into something that isn't what it is.
You want to cut off the discussion, or?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to solve this tonight.
Actually,
solve
I
this
have
here,
one more
so
comment before you leave.
Other questions?
Regarding the Eugene Field dollars, what you suggested may very well happen. We haven't had a discussion regarding.
I think that would be great.
Do with that. We did do that with we did return some dollars from the high school bond from the last go around, but until the bond passes, we have a firm direction on what we're going to do with Eugene Field. We really can't commit on what we might do in the future.
Other questions from Mr. Gallagher? Okay, thank you for your comments. Would anyone else like to address the board?
My name is Erin McCrae.
Please sign in so we have it for the record.
And I live in Scotts Mills. I have several concerns about this whole bond. And if he is quoting property rate is anticipated to remain, well, I'd like to know what anticipation was brought into that. I'd like to see the actual numbers, because you might do words, I do numbers, and everything that I've done shows that if there is no growth, which, you know, okay, maybe there will be, but maybe there won't be. My mother, who lives right up the hill, barely making her mortgage, will pay minimum of $1,500 more a year on her property.
As opposed if the bond does not pass?
Yes. Now, I'm sorry, that's the tax rate going up. I am a tax preparer. I am an accountant. I want to see the numbers. Because if you're telling me it's going to stay the same, I want to see that. What is the anticipation of growth to offset the increase in the bond measure? Anybody can answer me? No?
We just said the rate would stay the same at 335. I mean,
That's not what it says. It says the rate is anticipated to remain
Well, I don't
at
think-
existing levels. So what I'm asking is, who has the numbers?
Andy and
I
Jan,
would
correct me
like
if I'm
to see
wrong,
the numbers.
but I don't think we can give exact numbers until we actually sell the bonds.
Well,
That's
there's
part
some
of the issue.
That's correct. There's some truth to that, and Jan, you can chime in as well. I mean, the bonds are just that. They're sold on the market, and then they are variables, a number of variables.
Right.
However, when the analysis was completed by Seattle Northwest, which is our underwriter, the initial rate of growth was 1.5% of assessed value, and that's based upon
Per year?
Correct. That's based upon historical data in Marion and Clackamas counties, which, and again, we
How
were
long historical?
going back decades. I mean, it's something that,
This is what
And
I'm.
keep in mind, that is not just existing property, that's taking into mind new construction.
That's, and
that's
how are you
overall the entire
anticipating the
district.
New construction. How much new construction are you anticipating in this economy?
And we
And
don't
that's
do
what I'd
the
like
numbers
to know.
ourselves. Seattle Northwest, who does this
Okay.
for all school districts, calculated the numbers for
Okay,
us.
see, and this is what I'm going for. How can you guys say this in good faith when even though they did those numbers, in this economy, who's building?
I can provide the full analysis if that's what you'd like
I
to
would
see.
like to
It's not a
see it,
problem.
yes.
So if you could either email directly to me or to Denise, my secretary, and we'll get the most recent the recent analysis to you.
Is your email on here?
I don't believe it's on there.
It's the website.
It's on the website?
It's on the website.
Okay.
Yeah, you can just click on the superintendent on the website, but I'd be happy to share that with you.
Okay. Okay, the other concern is the inter-district transfers. I'm new to this city council in Scotts Mills and new to the school district. I don't have any kids of my own, but I'd still like to see kids going to school down the street rather than being bused 10 miles to Silverton. I mean, where's the gas money, stuff like that. I'm just wondering, because it doesn't really specify in here what kind of, the transfer policy, it just says transfer policy. I was reading the minutes, but
So
it
no-
doesn't state what it is, so where can I find those? Because I'm concerned about the enrollment there.
The full transfer policy is also on the district website. If you click on the board button, it'll take you right to policies, and you'll have to do a search for in-district or inter-district transfers, and there's actually a policy and a full administrative regulation for that as
Okay.
well.
I want to just address one thing you
Yes.
mentioned though about busing. We don't provide busing for students to other tennis zones unless it's already heading that direction already, so it's no additional busing.
Okay, so like if a kid transfers out of Scotts Mills, their parents have to drive them to
Generally,
Silverton?
yes. Generally, yes.
Okay. Just wondering. I'm just trying to get a picture
Sure.
of the whole thing, so.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Bielenberg.
Evening.
Thank you for hearing us all tonight. I know you have a thankless job, although it seems like everybody that gets up here thanks you for your job. So I do appreciate your job, and I sympathize with you. And I'd like to hit the busing real quick, because you said that you don't provide busing for it. In fact, you do, because the bus is already going there.
If it's already going there,
So
it's
it makes
true.
it convenient for the student. So it's wrong to come out and say you don't provide it unless you don't provide it, period.
I believe I
But-
said if we're going to make unnecessary bus
Okay, I'm not
routes.
going to have a discussion until I'm done talking. I would appreciate the control,
No,
Tim.
I just want clarity on
Yes.
what I said.
And I understand what you said. You said busing doesn't happen unless the bus is already going there.
Correct.
Okay? Then since there's a bus that already goes from Scotts Mills back into town, there's already a bus provided, right? So let's be clear, you do provide busing because buses is already provided. So that helps people who want to transfer their kids. It doesn't hinder them.
In some cases.
Okay, just go ahead, go ahead.
Look, I want a point of order here. It seems to me that the audience doesn't have unfettered right to come and say how the discussion is going to occur with the board. It strikes me that the board has the ability to interject if they want to, particularly to clarify points of, points that are being made with respect to communication that has just occurred, and to correct the record. So am I correct on that, Tim?
I would
Members of the
think
board?
so. I would think so, yes. I'll check Robert's Rules of Orders or whatever, but yeah, I would think to clarify things that we have said, I think that's fine, so.
And absolutely, I agree with you that you can question after my discussion, but to interrupt is just rude. If you want to run a board that's rude, it's up to you. I don't think it follows Robert's Rules of Order.
Okay, well, I'll check on that, so
So-
please continue.
So I'm just asking to not be interrupted. I don't want an argument. I don't think this is the place for an argument. That we can debate it after. I know when I run meetings, I take notes and I ask the questions after the person's finished talking. It's just how I run a meeting. So the open enrollment only works to create schools that have and have not. This was quoted by Salem. And if you think back to, let's say that the housing bubble did grow, or the housing kept going, it didn't pop, and we had a housing boom, and you needed 2 high schools. And so you remodeled the old high school, and then you had the new high school, this is the Taj Mahal. Where would you send your kids? Absolutely, we'd all pick the new high school if we could. And open enrollment, that's what people would do. And so you'd end up with 2 high schools, one running at 150% occupancy and one running at 50% occupancy. Clearly, that's not a good thing. I think one of the big jobs of the superintendent, and he pointed that out in one of his emails to me, that the occupancy of schools is one of his more important jobs. Scotts Mills was forced into joining Silver Falls School District. And the open enrollment policy is clearly hurting Scotts Mills. And I appreciate the folks on the board that are willing to help us and fix some of the problems. When Monitor closed, we ended up with about 50 more students. And I'm not going to give you exact numbers, you have those. But it increased our population by about 1/3. Yet our budget only went up a little over 10%. So I'm not sure how that happened. And then to top it off, we find out at the last meeting that a lot of the Monitor, and as I say Monitor kids, I understand that they're not all from Monitor, but a lot of the kids that Scotts Mills got, because of the Monitor school closing, were special needs or more, needed more than the average kid. Most of the average to above average kids were already transferred, had already transferred to other schools. It's been suggested that Scotts Mills become a magnet school. I'd be careful with that because we already are dealing with stereotypes out in Scotts Mills, And what I'm afraid of is that if you create a magnet school of, let's just say, for people that have English as a second language, then we have another stereotype that we have to fight with. And so, I would appreciate it as mayor. I'd appreciate it if we had a magnet school. If it was something that everybody wanted to come to, a high tech, something that you would want to bus your child out to Scotts Mills. That would work great. But if it's something that's a very specific program that not everybody would like, then I'm not sure that it's a good idea. It was stated that at the budget meeting, it was stated that it was a Scotts Mills problem, not a district problem, and that's not correct. It is a district problem. It's a district-wide problem. I have numbers for actual occupancy of all the schools, and I think somebody else is going to cover that, so I won't. It's a simple problem to fix. All you have to do is direct the superintendent to fix it. He will come with suggestions that may or may not include changing or tweaking the open enrollment policy. And I do think there are reasons for transfers. When I emailed him, some of the reasons we got were reasons like their cousins go to that school. Well, if their cousins go to that school, let them move to within that school district. I think one of the big reasons that people are transferring are if I have two kids, one's in daycare, one's in a primary grade, I have to drive to Silverton for my daycare child. I just as well drop the other one off at Evergreen or another school. And then as I come back home from Salem, I stop at the daycare and pick up my kids. So one of the easiest fixes for the problem that we have out there with open enrollment is to open a daycare. And we have a pod that's sitting empty. I emailed Andy over a couple weeks ago on this, and he said he would pass it to the board. I talked to Tim at the budget meeting, and I don't know if he's talked to you guys about opening any kind of daycare in the empty pod. It could be done very low cost. It needs to be done now. You need to budget for income as well as expense. There's a couple of different ways to do it. The school district could be in complete control, but also have the most risk. You could also just do a request for proposal and have a daycare provider actually do the bid. What I would suggest the school provide is the building and the utilities, and everything else be picked up by the daycare provider. It's very simple and very low cost. And I believe other schools that have daycares attached to them, they do very, very well. So it's simple. It just needs to be part of the superintendent's job to balance the schools to a reasonable level and keep it within 10%. Right now, they're over 30% difference. I was going to talk to you a little bit about the bullying and the problems that the kids in Scotts Mills have had going through high school. And ask what the stigmas were, because the last meeting you guys talked about stigmas, and how can I as mayor fix those stigmas if we're afraid to talk about them. And then during the break, one of the board members said, well, the reason people don't go to Scotts Mills is because you have midgets out there. It's very hard for me to say that. I don't think we have midget horses, we have midget everything else, but they are preferred to be referred to as little people, not midgets. And yeah, we do.
Ron, I'm going to interject here. I don't think that came from a board member.
It was overheard. It was overheard, and if it didn't come from a board member, I apologize. I did hear another comment myself, but I don't want to get into it. I just want to say we need a no bulletin policy. And I thought we had that. And then to find out that really there's still a problem. And I don't know what to do about that. Forcing parents to come tour the school was a great attempt, but I think it's actually going to create more problems. We had talked last meeting about having the parents at least come and visit the school before they pull their child out of that school, because a lot of them don't even come down to the school grounds. And I understand that you're trying to make it so that they visit, but you're taking somebody that's got a very negative view of the town and the school and forcing them to go there. I'm not sure if that's going to create, it actually work as good as we hoped it would. So I'm not sure that that's good. I do think that all-day kindergarten is a great thing. We had a perfect opportunity at the budget meeting, and I'm not sure why Andy chose to postpone it till tonight, but I hope you act on it tonight. I hope you also act on the daycare options. But I have two more things, and they're really doesn't affect the transfer. But the first thing is, I think First Street is terribly narrow, it's terribly dangerous, and I'd like to partner with the school district to put an educational trail there to get the kids off the road. And part of the reason is the increase in bus service really creates a narrow spot for our kids to walk. More than willing to sit down and talk with you guys about that later. The bigger problem that we have, and it's bigger than, this problem is a bigger problem than the occupancy rate in any of our schools. I'm very concerned when a principal is afraid to speak to the board because of repercussions from the superintendent. And that's an environment that's made by the superintendent.
Ron, you're getting into a shady area with personnel issues, so.
But we're
not allowed to discuss personnel issues in open session, so please keep your comments generic.
Okay. I believe that you are, let's pretend you're all on an airplane and you have a pilot that doesn't want to hear the input from his employees. And the co-pilot is saying, you know, we're out of fuel. But the co-pilot is afraid because of repercussions. And I understand personnel issues, and you don't want to directly talk about personnel issues. But when you have, and I don't think it's just one principal that is afraid.
I think we better.
Okay, well, so if you don't think that's a problem,
yeah,
that's all right.
I didn't say that, Ron. I said you're getting into a shady area, and we're not going to discuss personnel issues. And please. Okay, that's fine.
Thank you. Do you have any questions for me? And I appreciate.
Any questions?
I do appreciate you guys waiting and let me speak my piece, so we don't get in an argument during my presentation.
I wanted to know what other schools have childcare that you've checked out. You said that they've been programs that have been very successful elsewhere. You know, it would be nice to have actual documentation of some schools that had that.
Yeah, I don't have the documentation. I have talked to Marilyn, who had told me that other schools that have done that, because I broached her with the idea first about first, is there a pod available? And she said other schools are do very well with daycare.
And then I was a little concerned with kind of a contradiction where you said you didn't want the families to come check out the school. You know, at the same time, we're asking that, you know, you want the kids to stay there and to not transfer out but not check out the school.
No,
I just think that's very contradicting, and that to have that negative energy, you said, you know, with people going there. Let me finish. That that negative energy, that you didn't want that there, that you didn't want them to check it out if they already made up their mind. Kind of the same idea with the transfer. Those people, do you want them at your school if they've already chose that they don't want to be there? I mean, there is some of that too, so to me that's very contradicting.
So what I said is I didn't want them forced. I think they should be encouraged to check it out, but I don't want them to be forced to check it out. I think it's trying to make us feel good because we're making them check out Scotts Mills, and then yes, they don't like it, or yes, they like it. And you can try it if people change, if we get track it and see if it changes. But yeah, I love them to come if they have an open mind. I'm just afraid by forcing them, they don't have an open mind.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
In the interest of time, because I know there's probably other people who want to address the board, and I don't want to cut anybody off, but I'm going to ask people, if something's already been commented on, just leave it at that, so we're not repeating ourselves, and try to keep your comments to 3 minutes or under, please. Just in the interest of time.
And Tim, I'd also remind the audience that I think that there's some direction, just again, for the interest of time and to get through the whole agenda on the website regarding testimony at the public meetings, to keep your comments short. I know we gave Mr. Bielenberg quite a bit of latitude in that regard, but anyways, that just does ensure that everybody has an opportunity to speak.
Okay. Mr. Pfeiffer.
Hi, thanks for being here. I didn't intend to speak, but I wanted to listen tonight, and I'm here and speaking. Isn't the normal time 5 minutes? Tim, I intend not to go over like everybody else. I'll try to keep it to 3, but I don't know. Okay, moving forward. We're talking about rate, and this 335 is something that, depending on what period of time you present it in, whether that's significant or not. It wouldn't matter, but right now, Andy's picked this number. The assessor says it's $1,520,000 a year that we've been paying on the $15 million bond. And that's all we have then to pay over a period of time until the other bond drops off, which is $47.5 million. But then it's going to continue at that same rate, so it's going to get bigger. Well, I calculated at 20 years, we're actually going 25 years, that it's about $52 million. This new bond cost is about $52 million, whereas the old bond, from what is using at the assessor's office, is $30.7 million. So, in round numbers, $22 million more, and I think it's even going to be more significant than that because it's going to be additional years where we're going to be paying on a graph that is not normal like an amortization sheet. But by the way, I talked to a banker on this, and I did talk to the bonding company as well, not your bonding company. The rate is around 3% right now. So if you go on a standard amortization, it goes from full amount of principal to nothing. But what's happening, because you only have so much money to pay for it for the first 10 years or so, it's very level on principal payments, so we're not paying the principal off, it's staying rather high, so that the amount of interest that is being paid to the bondholder is more because of the period of time, in the first period of time that it's accruing. So we have this thing that's spread out over all these years. We're going to end up spending more money than the $52 million. It's $22 million. This is costing $22 million more. The impacts here are their social significance. People are losing their homes, worried about it. Historical significance. Waste of assets, waste of taxing potentials. In functional equity, and you guys didn't believe me 2 years ago, we have a $50 million asset at Schrade at the old high school. And Eugene Field School is about $15 million. That's $65 million. If we were able to fix them, as I say we can, that'd be a $50 million functional asset. Whereas what's happening on the other side, if we count keeping the gym as a positive asset, so I'll use 10 just for simplicity. I don't think you're going to spend $26 million on it. I think you're going to spend $40 million, as the architect said in the report that's just a year old. They said $40 million. So we got a negative $30 million going your way, and a positive $50 million in equity staying the other. That's a switch on the balance sheet. The difference is $80 million.
About a minute left, Gene.
Okay. I think that, you know, when I talk to people, I hear words about this is a fairly conservative group, and some people, they just don't understand how some of you can be voting on and pursuing this the other direction. So, you know, they're very concerned about it. I spent a lot of time on pounding the pavement in the last week. And there's other people that are perceiving another thing. There's a student, I've been receiving many emails and many phone calls that just say thank you. But there's a student that sent me a specific email. He said, I've been in the system all my life. I know what's going on. Why don't you write in one of your letters that in my math class, we don't even have enough paper to print our math problems. So here we are neglecting what's happening in the actual function of school, and we're wasting all this money on new school buildings that we don't need to. We can spend $4 to $6 million, take care of what we need now, and not waste money. Let's wait until we have to do later, which is not now. We don't need it now. We don't have the...
Please wrap it up, Gene.
We don't have the school, or we don't have the student population to require that being done now. We need to save the building until when we do. Thank you.
Questions?
Yeah, a couple comments and a question. First, I want to point out the numbers you're using are your opinion. I think many of your numbers for evaluations and remodels are incorrect. So make that clear. And you're absolutely correct for how the bond is set up. It's backloaded. We're going to pay more interest up front because exactly what you're saying. We're keeping the rate the same, and to do that, we're going to be paying a larger portion in the back end versus the front portion to make the numbers work. You made a comment when the original bond drops off, it gets bigger. What did you mean by that?
When the original 47.5 million drops off, this bond is still going to be there, making up the difference for when the big bond falls off. We're going to still see this rate continuing, and so no matter how you cut it, those people that are going to stay in this community are going to be burdened with a tax payment that's going to go for a long period of time. You can talk about this rate gimmick all you want. We're still going to be paying more taxes. And I'm not been fighting this just because of taxes. I just see so much waste in it, and I'm concerned about the historic significance in our town. Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, thank you, Gene.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Would you entertain the...
There's somebody coming up, please. Please sign in and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Robin Welch, and I'm a parent of Scott's Nose. I just have a couple of things. I think I have a little bit of a different opinion on the transfer policy. I think it's a good policy, has some good points to it. I'm the parent that if I want to move my kid, I'm going to move my kid. I just ask that maybe you consider limiting it. Maybe it's a first come, first serve, a certain percentage that's transferred. Once you reach that percentage, that's it, something like that. Some kind of tweak in the policy that benefits everybody. Not getting rid of the policy, not pushing it off the table. I get that. But just having something to help all of the schools, including Scotts Mills, that's obviously being affected by it. As a parent of Scotts Mills, I obviously think that all-day kindergarten is a great idea. The daycare, I love that idea too. I think it's great. I want to address something different. I've heard Butte Creek on the table. I just want to address the occupancy. Butte Creek's occupancy is 94%. I don't think they should be on the table for it. I think if you're going to pilot it, it should be at Scotts Mills, 65% occupancy. That's a big difference. So I think if you're going to pilot it somewhere, it should be there. The only other thing I really want to address is I think that this is a really good opportunity for parents and board members and administration to talk. I think that it has brought to light some things, and the bullying thing, I don't think that everybody was aware that maybe kids were bullied in Scotts Mills. Wally, I saw your face when it was talked about the high school, kids going to high school, sincerity on your face. You had no idea. It's a big deal. I don't think anybody here wants kids to be treated differently because they come from a school. just for that reason. It doesn't make any sense. So I really hope that as you're considering all-day kindergarten, and as you're considering what school to put it in first and what to do about it, please help us, and help us in standing out. I think that parents should come and see Scotts Mills. It's a great community. But also, we need your help to make it stand out. We need something to bring them in. We need something to get their attention, and we need your help in doing that. The last thing I want to say is something that kind of upset me at the last meeting, the budget meeting. In the minutes here that I'm reading, Wally suggested that the budget committee give recommendations. As a parent, and as somebody who's sitting at that meeting, I was a little offended to hear the budget committee being told they shouldn't weigh in. If they can't weigh in, who can? That was offensive to me.
Okay, just a comment on that. I think they did weigh in. I think the emphasis was that it was a board decision, and the board has had a lot of background in this. But I got a sense of what the budget committee felt, so I felt like they weighed in.
I think it was a good discussion, but sitting there listening to that as a parent, as an outsider, I don't like that kind of, you shouldn't weigh in. That bothers me. I think that everybody should be able to weigh in and have an opinion and ask for help. And what we're trying to do is figure out, can we do this? And if so, what programs can we do? And the all-day kindergarten is a great one. I think Scotts Mills needs more than that. Personally, I think the daycare idea is good. I think we need some real support for the first time. I really think, and I've told some of you this when I showed up before, I was really impressed by the support or the openness discussion that was there. I was really grateful for that as a parent. I'm not from Scotts Mills. I chose to be there, and I like the community. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Questions? Okay, thank you. Thanks for your comments. Anyone else?
Would you entertain a quick comment on procedures? No?
We'll deal with that later, thanks. Okay, nobody else wants to, there'll be another opportunity for audience with visitors later in the meeting. Moving on to discussion items. WSD board member election. We heard from Ken tonight. Like I said, this is an action item later in the meeting. Anybody have any comments?
I think Ken's done a great job. Really appreciate him stepping into what was a really difficult role. And for myself at least, I would support his return to Willamette ESD, unless he wants to trade jobs with me.
So. Yeah, I'm thankful he's willing to do that.
Yeah, very much so.
It's good for WSD and it's good for our district.
Very much so. Anything else? Okay, moving on. In-district student transfer process. And I had a suggestion on this one. We've spent a lot of time talking about the open enrollment policy, about different scenarios, budgeting, and things like that. We have talked about a couple different options for the Scotts Mills part of this discussion. And I would, if everybody agrees, I would like to kind of narrow our focus tonight to that part of it, the Scotts Mills part of this discussion. I know that there's been interest in talking about the open enrollment policy and some equity issues and things like that further. I think that would be a good conversation to maybe begin at a board retreat this summer and then continue that, some next year and things like that. But if people agree, and I would kind of like to narrow it down to coming to some kind of a resolution for the Scotts Mills part of this discussion tonight. What do you guys think?
So,
David?
What you're proposing is that we just focus on Scotts Mills?
Well, we've talked
about stabilizing it, and
we've talked about all-day kindergarten. Andy has, in our packet, Andy sent out another proposal that he has that I wanted him to discuss briefly, and to come to some kind of resolution. I mean, if you want to talk further about things, that's fine, but I just, it's getting late in the year, and I think we need to wrap up the Scotts Mills part of this discussion for a solution type of thing. And I know the open enrollment policy and things like that will continue. I'm not taking that off the table at all. I just want us to I just think it's time that we come up with, you know, with some of the solutions we've talked about, if we
Well, yeah.
can come to resolution on one.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess that would be a great topic for our board retreat, named open enrollment and just equity in general. Is there some way to come in and have someone come in and evaluate the district? And are we equitable? You know, I know as a business owner, I can call OSHA and have them come in for free, no consequences, and they'll walk through the place and tell you what you're doing wrong and what you're doing right. Is there a way to do something like that? Does OSBA have any, you know, equity, open enrollment, those type of things? Is there, I guess David, I'm looking at David as I ask that question about OSBA.
You know, Tom, I'm not aware that that organization has the ability to evaluate, to do that sort of work. I mean, they have resources, but we can certainly look into where they might direct us.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a possibility.
In Andy's most recent proposal, he had discussion of open enrollment and working on that policy as kind of a board goal for next year even. So, and I think it's something that we need, when we talk about it further, I think we need to include all the other schools in the part of the discussion, things like that.
Yeah.
So it can be a lot broader. I'm trying to get us to focus on, to wrap up part of this, and we've talked about a couple different solutions for Scotts Mills, and I wanted to kind of focus on that tonight if we could.
Yeah.
So.
Tim, I agree.
Okay.
You know, we just need to deal with the Scotts Mills situation, because there's so many that transfer out. It's one of the unintended consequences.
I agree.
You know, you summed it up well, I think a couple meetings ago, when you said it works well for 9 out of 10 buildings. What do we do about the 10th building?
Yeah, and we need to look at that. I think.
Yeah, I strongly support open enrollment.
Yeah.
I just want, so.
But we have talked about a couple, you know, the full-day kindergarten option and a couple immediate things that I would like to figure something out for tonight, if that's okay.
Well, as far as full-day kindergarten, you know, they need to know that now.
Yeah.
Sooner than later. Is that something we can discuss tonight?
Why don't we have, Andy, would you like to go through your proposal real quick? Or
I mean,
Sure.
Then we can kind of compare the two in our discussion, probably.
Absolutely, I can address, and some of these elements are not new, one or two are, and I'll summarize those and allow you to ask any questions. In my mind, these options allow for a few things. They allow for the honoring of the current open enrollment policy, because again, that a policy decision does take time. It takes significant conversation, and I like your idea of putting this as a board retreat item and using it even as some form of strategic planning as we move into the future. I was speaking with a few of you earlier between the last meeting and now, and the latest sort of revisitation of policies as significant as this was really just post-unification. So you've been operating with this very much in its current form since the late 90s, early 2000s. I think it has served you well. Clearly, there is interest in having you revisit that conversation, and I think that that's a healthy response. So that's one of them, is to consider your conversation related to those policies as it pertains to district-wide elements, and where do you see yourself 10 or 15 years from now? I think you have to do long-range planning when you begin to think of strategic planning. So by definition, some strategic planning and even some mission planning for this district hasn't occurred for a while, and I think it's timely to do it, especially with these two topics. Where you land, I'm not certain, but I think it is a natural opportunity and a springboard to do so. With that said, that kind of planning takes time. It's not something that you can do in one meeting or two meetings. In fact, true strategic planning can take the largest portion of a year as you go through the process. And if you recall your conversations with the OSBA representative last year who proposed and you considered the Lighthouse Project, which was a form of strategic planning and visionary planning, while it didn't fit, that formula didn't fit with you as a board at this time, I think there could be a modification to that would fit within this board over the course of next year. So I think that needs to be considered. I think there is some benefit to some of the suggestions that have been made district-wide to publicize the our approach to transfers, both in and out of district transfers. We've revisited those a little bit. Administrative team and I recently met to talk about updating profiles, putting electronic information on the website, easier accessible information so parents can see even information if we can, to allow administrators to better understand, principals to better understand which buildings have capacity and which don't. And I think if you're going to honor a true open enrollment policy, that kind of conversation is also reasonable to have and reasonable for the principals to know and hear. I also think, and this is the new portion, I also think that it's worth consideration, since you've heard quite a bit of discussion about protection of Scotts Mills School from its current level of operation and enrollment. I think it's reasonable for us to allow for budgeting purposes for the next school year, not the process we just finished, but for next school year to have a Scotts Mills School use the larger of the two enrollment figures for budgeting purpose, whether it be October 1st, 2012 or October 1st, 2013. There have been some suggestions that the enrollment may drop this fall. While that could be true, I think there's also a potential that enrollment could increase, especially with some additional drawn attention to Scotts Mills and so forth. So I don't know where that's all going to land, but that seems like a reasonable place to allow you that room, that 1 year sort of opportunity to take a deep breath and to sort out where does the visionary and the strategic planning fit within all of this, and essentially hold Scotts Mills harmless for 1 year from an enrollment standpoint, even if their enrollment does drop. So that's a new proposal that I'm throwing out in front of you for your consideration.
Are you suggesting that only for Scotts Mills?
Based upon the input that I've received, Wally, yes.
Clarifies, okay.
That's correct. Yes. I believe that includes the full description of what I wanted to propose to him.
Discussion.
For the full-day kindergarten, I think there should be a little bit more discussion in regards to that. My only concern is if we just go and say, hey, they need to do full-day kindergarten, let's put it as a pilot program out there, that you won't have the kids. You know, and that what is the need out there? Is there enough? Would it make a difference? Could we, bring in some more people? What would the advertising look like to get those kids in? I know that right now they're doing like kindergarten roundup here shortly, and that's crunch time. I don't think it's really that reasonable that it's really gonna happen this year, but I would like to have it as a definite for next year. Where you figure out that you do have at least this many kids that are interested, you advertise it. I mean, Mount Angel's been advertising it galore, and I think there's some validity to getting that program started there. And that once they start there, they usually stay there. That's been what's happened in the past.
I would agree with that, Julie. I'm a little nervous about the district funding a half-day kindergarten teacher out there, not knowing how many kids might show up for for next year. I think Andy's proposal about the funding, holding Scotts Mills harmless at the same funding level, is a good solution to help us kind of evaluate things next year, to maybe help the school see what the interest is in a full-day kindergarten, if that would get more, if that would actually get more kids to go out there. Some things like that, little promotion, some stuff like that. So that's kind of where I've landed on this.
Andy, have we heard if Mount Angel's been attracting some of our students yet?
We've received 2 requests for a full-day kindergarten program in Mount Angel within this district.
What school boundary?
I believe Eugene Field.
How many kids typically, how many sign up at kindergarten roundup? How many, are most of the kindergartners signed up, or majority, or?
Tom, I'd have to lean on the principals for that. I'm not certain. I know they get quite a sign up, and then that gets adjusted over the summertime, and their final numbers aren't truly known until August.
Right. Well, so then there is time. I mean, if they, if we gave the funding, I'm sure they'd start beating the bushes right now. And then the momentum could be growing for the following year. There's that. If we don't start now, we never get started. So, there's just that.
Other thoughts?
Well, I agree with what Tom just said. I think, excuse me, lose my voice every time I come to a school board meeting. I think that there's some real potential with kindergarten, as we've discussed it, and I agree with what Tom just had to say. My concern is that if we don't do something more dramatic than what we're proposing, we're basically just kicking the can down the road and waiting to see what happens. And I think we pretty much know that whatever happens is not going to be good. So I think that's where I'm coming from. I'm not sure that we have enough data and analysis to see how the proposal that's been floated this evening will really impact the school, what the effect will be, what the dollars and cents are if we do this, and I think we need to know that before we make a decision. I think in the face of that lack of information, it's probably not reasonable to expect us to make a decision tonight.
A decision on what, David?
On what we're going to do about Scotts Mills. Our focus, as you just stated, was to try and reach some kind of a consensus or some kind of a conclusion about how we were going to deal with the issues at Scotts Mills, stabilizing the enrollment or raising the attendance.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think we should also add that that's one of the newest buildings in the district. It would just be good to keep it full. It's the third newest building, I believe, isn't it? I think the high school, Robert Frost, and then Scotts Mills is that's the order of the, it just makes sense to keep it full. We're gonna need it for a long time. I mean, long term, I think our plan is to keep it, we're gonna be using this building for.
Oh, it's a strategic building.
Yeah,
of course, yeah.
Exactly. So let's keep this thing going.
I wasn't able to be at the budget discussion last week, but I know, Andy, you were going to provide additional dollars to each of the schools. I don't remember the number right now off the top of my head. But with that, would Scotts Mills have, and plus with the change in how you're making the figures between 2012 2013, would Scotts Mills possibly have the dollars available to fund all-day kindergarten within their own budget right now? I don't know.
No, there were $150,000 that were rerouted through the formula district-wide, and I believe that resulted in, I don't know, $7,000 for Scotts Mills, $8,000. I don't recall, Wally. It was in there somewhere.
All right. Thank you.
Other thoughts?
Would it be possible to set some timeline to where if there weren't enough, a certain threshold number of kids signed up, then, we set a contingent, we'll do full day kindergarten if we have, 12 kids by X date, make that date fairly soon. If that can't be achieved, then
It's a great idea.
Then no. So the date would have to be pretty soon so that we could implement, and then also if it wasn't able to occur, then people could get those kids.
I'd be comfortable with that.
It's a great idea. I think it's a very good idea.
Yeah, I wouldn't be comfortable with that, too. What would you suggest that date be, Owen?
Well,
Or maybe
I'm a long
Andy
way
would
from
be
knowing where,
better.
I just kind of had the idea and shouted it out, so I don't know. I'd rely on the administration for some real guidance on that and the number of kids that might be required to make it feasible.
So you're saying if through promotion and things like that, if the school gets to that level of kindergartners coming in, we would fund the other half-day teacher from the district. And if that didn't happen, we would just simply go with Andy's latest proposal and evaluate it through next year then.
Yeah, then the other components of Andy's proposal then gives us some, it kind of helps us to maintain the status quo as far as funding for the existing teachers and to maintain the grade levels and things like that. So we have some more time then to the funding levels.
Yeah.
If enrollment did drop out there this year. So.
Well, I was concerned about Mount Angel pulling kids away from the district and thereby losing funding. So I was thinking actually we might have to look at Butte Creek as well, but based on if we only have 2 kids going there today and they're both from Eugene Field, that doesn't carry much weight. So
yeah, I don't think
this would be a good pilot.
I could get behind that also. get to a certain level of kids, a certain number of kids.
I think working with Marilyn Annan would be helpful in that area and get it for just a set date of what would be a reasonable time and kind of go from there. I don't know where to start with the date time either.
I think we need the kindergarten roundup experts to help us.
Yeah.
Some big time cheerleaders.
Do you have any thoughts on that, Andy? What would be
I think you're correct, and that would take some building-specific direction, and I'd have to work with Marilyn if we were to go do that as an option. I think it's just out of the fairness to the entire conversation here, using full-day kindergarten, while it's attractive, I want you to think just very cautiously. Ultimately, this is your decision, but think very cautiously about the potential impact on the rest of the district, and whether there are representatives from any other schools who would feel a similar need within their building. Now, I'm not suggesting anything other than I think the circumstances at Scotts Mills truly are impacting. I don't think anybody's going to minimize that at all. However, you've got an open enrollment policy, and you've got a site-based decision-making policy, and I share both of those with you just as reminders of caution to say, if there is additional staffing approved for a building in this district, that needs to be a very defendable position from a district-wide standpoint. And so I'm throwing that your way for healthy conversation.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things there. First of all, we do have the open enrollment policy, and if Scott Mills doesn't fill up, then they have an option of full day versus partial day. But I know I'm old, my kids are older now, and personally I don't like all-day kindergarten. I would never put my kids in all-day kindergarten. I thought it was just me, so I talked to my niece who has a child going into kindergarten next year. She felt the same way. She did not want to have full-day kindergarten. She went partial day. So I think it still provides an option within the district for parents that do want all-day kindergarten versus those that don't.
Well, it strikes me that there may be some advantage, just the idea of piloting, not just some advantage to the entire district here if we're going to be faced with it district-wide, that anytime we're doing something new, there's going to be unforeseen wrinkles, and it seems like it will help have the potential anyways to help the district, district-wide when we do have to go to all-day kindergarten throughout.
And what's the current date on that, Andy? Is it
2015 is when funding will be released for kindergarten, all-day kindergarten.
I agree with Owen. I think that whenever you have a pilot program, it has district-wide implications in terms of education and future planning, training, all of those things. I mean, there's a great deal to learn.
It'd be great to see how these kids perform as they go up through the grades too. Do they perform better in first and second grade? I know Common Core at the kindergarten level, I don't know how in the world you get through all that material with a half a day. I don't know if the kids can stay awake and focus that long either, but it'd be interesting to see if you actually see a educational difference as they go up first, second grade.
I do understand Andy's point though about district-wide issues and other schools, representatives from other schools saying, well, we have this issue, we could use another half teacher too, because I have gotten a couple phone calls since the last budget meeting. So that is out there. That's something we have to think about.
And it will come.
And it will come.
Well, sure.
But and I don't think Irv would mind me repeating something he said. He said that in his mind it's defendable to do this at Scotts Mills because they do have so many more kids transferring out than have transferred in. So that's another side of it. But at the same time, our policy is site-based budgeting, and some schools have things that others
Well,
ones
keep in
don't.
mind, this may not work either, so we need to keep that in mind. Keep that in front of us as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel good about the diligence that we've done, the discussions we've had, and you never. This isn't a scientific or a mathematical problem, but I feel like we've done the due diligence, we've done we've had the discussion and the contemplation, and so to me, it seems defensible from that standpoint. Certainly hasn't been far from a knee-jerk reaction, or anything of that sort, so.
Certainly worked this issue.
Yeah.
So.
Do we need to take action, Andy, or Can we just leave it at,
I
Where
think
we-
it would be appropriate for clarity that some form of action be taken
Okay.
this evening if that's what you choose to do. And with that, what I think I'm hearing from the board is that you would consider providing sufficient dollars based upon sort of a cutoff date. That's what I hear you saying, by a certain time, if sufficient students were drawn to a pilot full-day kindergarten program at Scotts Mills School, that you would provide funding for that to occur. And again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think that's what I'm hearing you say, versus here's $40,000 and let's buy another half-time teacher.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned. We don't know the details yet. We don't know the number. I think we can come up with something fuzzy there to figure out what that number is going to be. But we also don't know the dollar amounts and how we're going to fund it and what that's going to look like. And I'm not sure how to direct you.
No, that's fine, and you know, maybe action isn't necessary tonight. This is a new place, I think, for all of us. I think we can I can come up with a proposal with Marilyn's input and bring that proposal back to you with specified dates, specified numbers, and assuming that's what. Again, I think I hear all of you saying that I can produce that, and then you'll have a proposal to take action on, specific to that, with deadlines, with numbers, et cetera.
why don't we do that? Our work session is next week, so on next Monday,
That's right,
correct?
and you
Because
also
Memorial Day.
have you approve the budget, adopt the budget, excuse me, in early June, and you'll have a budget hearing at that time. So, Jan, correct me if I'm mistaken, but it would be appropriate for a change to occur at that time as well, or you could take action as soon as next Monday, assuming we can get a proposal together, which I think we can.
Monday would be appropriate because everybody wants to move forward. and
Right.
Yes.
have some
For this
very-
proposal.
Okay.
And is it also fair to say that we're going to have a number, I mean, they can start talking about the potential for full-day kindergarten out there. Is that something they can feel free to start talking about tomorrow?
That's up to the six of you. It sounds like it, Tom. I hear you saying
I
this.
think it's fair to say the board is moving in that direction, but we haven't made an official.
Okay.
Right, I think we've reached a pretty clear consensus this evening.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I don't hear any significant disagreement.
Yeah, and this is one of the, you know, like I said, it's one of the unintended consequences of open enrollment, and we have local funding, open enrollment, so it's kind of a form of competition. And in any type of competition, you tend to do something with the team so that's losing the competition. They get first draft picks or revenue sharing or things like that. You have to aid the one that's down to get them back up. Because we need to use carrots, because the only other way to get enrollment up out there is going to be sticks, and that means Andy's going to start denying transfers at some point. I don't think Andy's too excited to do that, and I don't think we really want that. I think we want people who want to go out there.
That's bad for parents and bad for students.
Yeah, no, and the grades are, I mean, you know, it's as strong a building as the grades are fantastic out there, and, you know, so I think we need to throw little carrots out, a few carrots.
Okay.
Any other thoughts? Okay, any other items for discussion tonight? Seeing none, administrator and staff reports. Andy, May 21st election.
Yeah, it's a brief report. I don't know that I even need to make it because it's a reminder about the May 21st election and to encourage those in attendance tonight and those watching on television as well to be certain to cast their vote. Their ballot. It's an important election obviously from the bond standpoint, but there are board candidate elections, there are Chemeketa Community College elections, fire district elections, and a number of them that please vote. So that's my message. Important time, important message. Let's all do our civic duty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jan, financials.
Just one comment I wanted to add to what you received in the mail is I've gotten several updated state school fund estimates for last year and this year, and the most recent puts us up about between 70 and 75,000 above what I shared at the budget meeting.
Oh, good.
Oh, good.
It's helpful.
And I think I heard on the radio that the governor's going to, and his team's going to come up with a forecast here in the next few weeks.
Yeah, it should be next week, I believe.
Next week?
Yeah, late this week.
Okay.
Good. Positive. Okay. Dustin, Central Howell and title programs.
All right, so I'm here to talk about title programs and Central Hal, and I came here in October and gave you all kinds of information about title programs, so I'm just going to talk about a little bit of difference for next year. There's really only one big change for next year, and that's the decrease in funding for Title I due to sequestration. And our Title I program district allocation is due to be about $72,000 less next year. Final numbers will come out in August. Hopefully they'll have some preliminary numbers in June, but just it's an estimated 72,000, and I've already given the principals an estimated allocation for next year so they can start planning their staffing, because it would reduce staffing depending on the building or just Title I expenditures throughout the year. And our district average right now is 45.1%. Any questions about Title I?
Is 45.1% high or low?
Well, I
Average?
think
How does
the
that-
number that we're going to use for next year is going to be down to 42.
Okay.
We used to be, when I first started doing this in our district, 36, 39. So it did climb as the economy went south.
Do you know how we compare to other districts, Dustin?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't.
What level does a building have to be a Title I or a partial Title?
In our district, and we follow what the federal law is, you can be at or any school at or above your district average can be funded. But if we had 40 schools and there were 20 at or above the district average, you can still choose to fund the neediest 10 or neediest 5 or 15. You don't have to fund all 20. In our district, if you're above the district average, then we fund you as a Title I school.
Got it, okay. How do we differentiate between partial title and full title?
Well, you're either a Title I funded school or you're not.
Okay, I thought that maybe I could.
There's partially funded employees.
Okay.
That are general fund part of their day, title funded part of their day, but as a school, you either are or you're not. Okay, Central Hal. So our enrollment as of today is 179 students, and last May we were at 166 students, and we peaked out this fall at 189.
Wow.
And we just had some move-aways throughout the year, and so we're projecting 180 or more next spring. But we're pretty full. We're going to take in 24 kindergartners. We have about 28 on the list, so 4 of those little ones are not going to get in. And I am sure that some of those 28 some of those parents I know are shopping around, so they won't all end up at Central Hal. So we may all get all the way down to the end of the list. But there's a lot of shopping around going on. But since we take Pratham's, and Pratham is estimated, I think, about 9 for next year as of right now, and then combine that with our Central Hal students, we should be at 24. And that'll be a nice number for our school, and it'll keep filling in the blanks as they move up through the grades.
So it'll be 1 class or 2 then for next year?
Just 1. But we have a morning assistant dedicated that we split with Pratham on the funding to help with those kids all morning long. Now this year we did have 36 kindergartners, and I thought I'd give you the breakdown on that. 17 were from Central Hal, and that's a big group from Central Hal. 4 were from Pratham, 4 were from Eugene Field, and 1 was from Evergreen. 9 were from Salem Kaiser, and 1 was from Jervis. And we originally had 6 Pratham kindergartners, but 1 moved and 1 moved to the Central Hal area. 1 moved out of state. We continue to benefit from Salem Kaiser transfers. Our free and reduced meal count in comparison to the 45% district average is only at 24%, and it was last year 29.9. So our poverty rate has gone down. We have 0 migrant ed students, but migrant ed has really decreased in the district overall. We have very few ELL students, and Pratham ELLs travel to Central Hal in the afternoon to receive services from our ELL teacher. And we have 19 students receiving special education services in our school. Next year we will only have 1 half-time morning kindergarten teacher, and then we'll have a solid first grade, a 1-2 combo, and that's to split up that large first grade class.
3, 4, 4, 5, which is what we have this year, and a 6, 7, 7, 8. When we did Spirit Week this year, they had a dress-up day, and it was really nice to see kids coming to school in their nicer clothes or the going to church clothes. It was really unusual because we just see them in their, their regular daily clothes. But that was a very nice thing. So I'm promoting that. Stay in Spirit Week each year. Our girls basketball team. It's been a long time, but our girls basketball team took first place in our league. They were co-champions with Silvercrest. And we have a new banner hanging in our gym, thanks to our parent club. We do an annual bullying survey. It's an anonymous survey. It's done through SurveyMonkey, and I put the link on our website. And then I have the teachers direct the kids to the website. It takes them maybe 5 or 10 minutes. And they can anonymously report who they've seen bullied, who's doing the bullying, and what they've actually done about it. If they've done anything, did they report it? Did they just let it go? Did they stick up for the bully? A variety of questions. And so then once those are all completed, I talk to the kids who are being accused of bullying, and then I talk to the kids who have been bullied to see if that's still going on, because sometimes it's stopped, or sometimes it is ongoing. And then I talk to other kids that could be related to the situation. And then for Central Howell, this works for Central Howell. I don't know if it worked for other schools, but I bring the bully and the other student, the victim, into the same office. And that seems to be very effective because the bully is confronted in our small school setting in front of the kid that they've been picking on. Now, I don't have to do that much because there just isn't, there's not that much being anonymously reported. But I think for our small school, that approach works. It may not work. I can't imagine that would work in a Salem Kaiser 900 student middle school, but at Central Howell, that's a pretty effective way of dealing with it. We also do lots of academic awards, accelerated reader awards, honorable mention, perfect attendance, and we have regular awards assemblies to recognize kids for all these positive things. We're not finished with Oaks, but the initial results are good. Reading is going better than math, but I think that's probably district-wide and statewide. We have a week and a half to go. We have lots of kids taking their second attempts in reading and math this week and finish up by next Wednesday. Our teachers spent another year emphasizing writing, and compared to results from last year's district assessment to this year's writing district assessment, there was a lot of improvement in the number of students who were meeting or exceeding standards in writing. We're also starting, we started today our own school-wide writing assessment kindergarten through 8th grade, and we're going to compare spring to spring and then this final assessment when we're done with that. Briefly on Accelerator Reader, we've been doing it for a number of years, but when I was looking at the stats to get to report to this group, our students have read over 1,000 books more than they had read at this time last year. And so they're really doing very well. And this is usually outside of school reading. It's not during the school day. So kids are doing an outstanding job. We had 6 students get to our Cougar level, which is the very highest level that they can get to in our AR program, and the parent club provides them a free lunch. That's the big payoff for getting to the top. And we continue to use regularly our One Call Now. We have packed houses as our Christmas and spring programs. People were lining up 45 minutes in advance of the door opening. Nobody else was there, but there was a line forming for our spring program a few weeks ago. We just had a hoop shoot fundraiser, which is like a jogathon, only kids shoot baskets instead of jogging laps. And the students raised over $3,000 to put towards new glass backboards. So you combine that with the butter braid sales that the parent club did, and we're going to get some nice new backboards for our gym, which would be a great addition. And we had 2 OBOB teams this year, headed by Charmin Ross and Becky Roska. And we now have a core group of parents who regularly come to our parent club meeting, which then is going to allow us to start divvying out responsibilities rather than, the same group of 3 or 4 people feeling like, and rightfully so, that they're doing all the things that the parent club needs to do. So this is a really big thing to be able to dole out responsibilities across a large number of people. And that for Central Howell is a large number of people regularly attending our parent club meetings.
That's good. You've had some moms graduate recently.
Yeah, that's right, that's right. And we go, our parent club meetings usually go, we get out of school at 3:30, we usually start at 2:45 or 3 o'clock. So we hit that group as they come to pick up their kids. And we've got a grandparent in the group as well, but that seems to be a really good time. We've tried night, we've tried after school, so we tried right before the end of school, and that seems to be a very good time. And then we're constantly calling on One Call Now for volunteers. And this was the first year since I've been there, and this is my fourth year, we've actually had some people not be afraid to step up to be parent club president. It's like they want to be involved, they want to volunteer, they want to help as much as possible, but they don't want to take that next big step. And we actually had 2 people who are going to co-president, so that'll be very nice. Grandparents' Day is this Friday at 11 o'clock at Central Howell. That's a big event. Central Howell, our gym will be packed with lots of grandpa and grandmas, and a little program to go with that. Monitor track meet. It will be at Silverton High School on the 24th. And we're having a talent show on May 31st. Towards the end of the day, time hasn't been determined yet because we don't quite know how many acts there will be. And our 8th grade graduation is Friday, May 7th at 6:30 p.m. And the thing that everybody wants to know is Central Howell Parent Club will still be serving deep fried Twinkies at Oktoberfest.
Right. Oreos also.
Yeah. Any questions about Central Howell or type?
Yeah, with 180 kids in the school, what's your class sizes look like?
Oh, well, we didn't take any transfers this year, and our 6, 7, 7, 8 classes got up to 34 and 35, yeah. But now they're down to around 28 and 30 because kids moved away just over the year. Kindergarten will be at 24, first, second, third, fourth, fifth grades, they'll be somewhere between 25 and 23. Middle schools will be between 28 and 30.
Okay.
But our middle school is always full. We really don't have any openings next year. I mean, it's going to have to be, as one moves out, I'll make a phone call. Mm-hmm. We're pretty full. But okay. I know people will move away over the summer, so I know we'll have some of those openings.
Other questions for Dustin? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Linda Myers, Victor Point, and District Curriculum.
Okay, so I've always wanted to say, you should have received in your packets my report. If you have any questions. But I will be very brief. I don't need to read this information to you. You can take this with you, and you certainly know where I am if you have any questions. But just as a quick update, we are virtually finished with Oaks testing up at Victor Point, and our students have scored very, very well. Preliminary scores, just based on our own hand calculations, do put us above both the district and the state average at all grade levels in both reading and math. So tremendously proud of the work that our teachers and our instructional assistants and our kids have done in meeting those achievement benchmarks. So enrollment, we continue to grow, although I will say that we've plateaued a bit by necessity's sake in that there simply is no more space. I do know that there were some questions about our bubble in our middle school, and so I have given you some figures on the handout. Our average class size for the fall in K-5, those are all self-contained classrooms, averages right about 23. The biggest class in our K-5 will be 25 students, and we have a really nice small kinder group coming in. Our bubble is in particularly 6th grade, but that creates an issue for us because we have our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders together in a middle school combination in 2 classrooms. So that does put us at 34 and 35. And our solution to that is that we have pinched our pockets and tightened our belt as much as possible. And the Victor Point budget will be funding an additional half-time teacher to come in during the morning. So we will have a self-contained 6th grade classroom for, I believe, reading, writing, and math. And then we'll figure out what we do after that. I did make a note on there that it is it is our intent, it is my intent to make that a full-time classroom as soon as possible. And some of that just has to do with waiting for the 3-year average to catch up in our funding formulas.
How far behind are you on that average? If you were...
We have, so for the past 5 years, we've had 30 kids at Victor Point that we have not been funded for.
Right, it hasn't caught up, you're always...
Right. Because we grow about 10 kids per year, you get financed for about 3
Right.
of those kids for every
Yep.
10 that you gain, so.
Yep.
But, you know, we've ridden this wave before. We implemented our 5th grade classroom in a similar fashion in that we hired her as a half-time teacher, and we were creative with that afternoon combination, and the staff at Victor Point are amazing, so they will continue to manage and we'll continue to do the best that we can do for kids. The numbers aren't changing, the kids aren't changing. They're there today and they'll be there in the fall, and we'll figure out how to meet their needs just like we have this year. And I think our track record has proven that we've been able to do that, so I don't anticipate that changing. But in the long term, I don't want 29 kids in a classroom. I don't want 34 kids in a classroom. So the long-term plan, most definitely, and we will catch up. It just is, it is what it is.
So recently you've seen a lot of growth from in boundary.
Yeah, we're only about
families.
30% transfers at Victor
Do you
Point.
see that continuing, or are we?
Some of that came from some of the bigger farms putting farm housing. So we do have some skilled laborers that are in, and a lot of that transition that we're starting to see is that now young families are coming back to the homesteads and are moving into the big farmhouses, and so their kids are now enrolling at Victor Point. Yeah, we actually have less, percentage-wise, we have fewer transfers now than we've had when I started. So it's just, again, kind of that ebb and flow. We have fewer Salem Kaiser students than we've had in the past. Again, it's just the ebb and flow. It's just the dynamic of kids in and out. I will say that once they come, very rarely do they leave. So we don't tend to have, we'll lose a few move-outs, families relocated and whatnot, but because of the farm work, they're pretty stable. I mean, it's their farm. They're not going anywhere. So, so when I look at the list, I would say I can guess with probably 95% predictive validity who's going to walk in the doors, because those farm kids are not going anywhere else. So they will be there in the fall, and we'll be ready. So, school climate, just so that you're aware of kinds of the ongoing things that go on. We do have, I'm looking right at you, David. We do have a monthly assembly, and that is particularly geared to awards, but specifically identifying individual students in each classroom. I ask each teacher to hand select 2 or 3 students who have embodied respect and responsibility, and those names are forwarded to me, and I craft personalized notes to those students. We recognize them publicly in an assembly and talk about why they're being recognized for being respectful or being responsible, and then those kids have a special lunch with me and get to celebrate that. Their names are published in the newsletter, and frequently parents are invited and will attend those assemblies to see their kids honored as well. One of the things I'm most proud of is something very small, but it has a huge impact, and that is just our agreement on the common language that we use for our behavioral expectations and our discipline. We all talk to kids the same way. So we all talk to kids about, are you being respectful? Are you being safe? Are you showing responsibility? And just that common language in the way we deal with kids, either in setting behavioral expectations up front or in dealing with discipline issues, has had a really profound impact on kids having an understanding that that's just the way we do things at Victor Point. Doesn't matter if you're on the playground, doesn't matter if you're in the library or in a classroom or whose classroom you're in. This is the way we talk about the way we behave at Victor Point School. So, as far as school climate, that's been probably the best thing we've done. PTCC, just a hats off to them. I don't come here and brag about them very often, but we do have a fantastic parent-teacher community club, and they continue to be incredibly supportive. They run multiple fundraisers. Some of them are very active fundraisers, things like Chili Feed and Pie Socials. Some are more, I guess, what I would consider passive fundraisers, things like eScript. If you're familiar with that, that's just tied to your Safeway card, and when you purchase things on Safeway, a portion of your, I don't actually know how it works. A portion of your purchase, I guess, is donated to your local school. So between all of those ventures, PTCC has brought in almost $10,000 to Victor Point. So for a school of 200 kids, that's incredible. And so they've been, again, very, very generous with the kinds of things they funded. You'll just see the note there, field trips, book sets, assemblies. They've sent our teachers to workshops. They brought in an artist in residence. They've purchased sports equipment, paint and equipment for the library and the computer lab. They purchased a classroom amplification system for one of our middle school rooms. They're investigating a purchase of a new scoreboard for the gym. Again, their generosity has just been tremendous, and our teachers use them as a resource to support kids. So. The other thing that PTCC is looking at is a new Lego robotics club. I believe Bethany has a robotics club. I believe Scott Smills has a Lego robotics club. And Butte Creek, I believe, may have one as well. Anyways, we contacted a couple of those resources, a couple people in some of those buildings, and we actually had a parent meeting. There's a lot of interest generated for Lego robotics. So that'll be something they're going to continue to talk about and probably look to moving to something like that in the fall. So that'll be a new venture. It'll be kind of fun. Victor Point, I don't know if you have any questions specifically about Victor Point, but I'll let you ask those before I move on to just a quick curriculum review.
Questions? Doesn't look like it.
Okay. So I just listed curriculum initiatives just so that you have a pulse of what's coming, and the train's leaving the station. So I just want you to know where we will be when we join forces again in the fall. The big three are listed there. There are actually other things that are coming down the pike, smaller initiatives, things like the new state-required kindergarten assessment. There are other things that are also brewing for the fall, but these are the big three. And they include Senate Bill 290, which is the Educator Effectiveness Bill, and so that will be our brand new teacher evaluation system. Obviously, that probably sounds like an HR initiative, and it is. However, I've worked very, very closely with Eric because we do believe that the core components of the new evaluation system really are about improving instruction in the classroom. So that most definitely is right up my alley. And so we have spent a lot of time in meetings with teachers and committee members trying to design the best system, manageable system. And so there will be a technology component to that, and we will have forms and whatnot available online. Marie Traeger came and gave you, I think, the kind of brief overview gist of that system. And so at this point, just know that it's coming, and we'll be anxious to give you an update. I think after we get through that first October round of where we've done those pre-conferences and we've set some goals, I'll be able to give you a better sense of how we're rolling and what it really looks like to sit down with a teacher and write a student growth goal based on achievement data, and how does that feel, and where is that going to go, because that's very, very different than anything we've ever done in the past. So, in addition, House Bill 2220 is proficiency standards-based grading. This is legislation that takes effect July 1st, 2013, and it may have far-reaching ramifications eventually. I think the district is being wise, and we're making some decisions about biting off some manageable portions of this that we can chew one at a time. And so the two main emphasis in this legislation are dividing out the way grades are reported to parents. So by law, being forced to separate academic grades from behavior grades. So things like attendance and participation not being calculated in an academic grade. So an academic grade would merely demonstrate to a parent, what does the child know?
I know you didn't make up this law, but how do you separate the two? Because many times they're directly related.
However, it gets a lot muddier when you think with a middle school or a high school hat. But if you think K-5, which is half of our students, it is very, very reasonable. And frankly, all of our teachers do it already. When you are reporting a grade in third grade or lower, so we're hopping.
Lots of stuff. Lots of new stuff. Questions for Linda? Great, Linda, thank you very much. Moving on, board reports. Anybody have any reports tonight? There was in our packet, Andy included a letter that addressed from Carol Samuels, who is with Seattle Northwest, who does our bonding, and she addressed some questions that have come up. And I would just like to say that the way I read it, the district is doing a really good job at making things clear and sorting things out through this bonding process. So, any other comments?
Yeah, thanks for getting that information together.
You're welcome. I think it's really, excuse me, really important to respond to some of the criticisms that have been leveled. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for your time.
Okay, correspondence. We've got different letters through email and things like that. Anything else, Andy?
Nothing new since late last week.
Okay. I'd like to open it up for a second audience with visitors, limited to discussion and action items. Would anyone else like to address the board? Okay. We have one action item tonight then, WSD board member election. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll move that do we elect or appoint Ken Hector?
We nominate. We vote for him.
We vote for him?
We vote.
How is it phrased?
I have
That he be you approve him as the Zone 3 nominee for the WESD board.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I would move that we approve Mr. Ken Hector as our nominee for the Zone 3 position. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I'll start after. It's 2 hours past my bedtime. Come on.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you very much. We're going to take about a 5-minute break. We're going to move out of open session and into executive session under ORS 192660. So thank you for coming, everybody.
More water.